Good evening. Welcome to Center for Spiritual Life Book Shorts. I'm Brenda Suiter, and tonight I will be reading out of the book Can We Talk to God by Ernest Holmes, who is the founder of Centers for Spiritual Living. Science of Mind is his textbook, okay? So I'm reading chapter 6. It's called Spiritual Evolution. The evolution of humankind is definite, unhurried, and purposeful. This purposefulness is proven by the fact that something is evolving in a definite manner. There is intent behind the life of the individual. It makes no difference what the process is through which this intent is working. It matters not whether we intuitively conclude ourselves to be the offspring of a divine consciousness, or whether we take the more painstaking process and trace our pedigree back to its first movement. We shall arrive at the same conclusion, that something definite is taking place. Beloved, now are we the sons of God, and it doth not yet appear what we shall be, but we know that when he shall appear, we shall be like him, for we shall see him as he is. The writer was referring to the Christ idea, the universal sonship, the God-intended person, set before us in the Christian scriptures as the Christ, the ideal person. We are told that all are members of one body, which is the Christ, the Son, begotten of the only Father. And it doth not yet appear what we shall be, but we know that when he shall appear, we shall be like him, for we shall see him as he is. And yet it says, Beloved, now are we the sons of God. Even though the process of evolution is still taking place and has not stopped, and perhaps never will stop, because we shall always unfold. We are now, though, in a state of incompletion, the children of God. And as we more completely evolve, we shall see the Christ appear. And when he shall appear, we shall be like him. For we shall see him as he is, being transformed from glory unto glory by reason of that divine urge hidden within each of us. The writer was talking to his associates and saying, Do not fear. You are now the sons of God. Do not worry. It is necessarily so. As your consciousness expands, you will understand what true sonship means, what God is, what divine sonship means. As you awaken, you will realize that you are awakening to yourself. When he shall appear, we shall know him, because we shall be like him. This is the message he was trying to convey, that even now the divine reality is accomplished in the infinite mind. Beloved, now are we the children of God. In other words, within each one of us is an indestructible, an eternal person, a spiritual person, a God-intended person. So we are told to be transformed by the renewing of our minds, by the putting off of the old person and the putting on of the new, which is Christ, the God-intended person. As we trace the unfoldment of human personality, we find a calm, unhurried, definite, and irresistible impulse, building finer forms and more intelligent avenues of self-expression, coming up through all the stages of unconscious and simple conscious organisms, until at last it reaches a cycle which ushers in self-conscious humankind. A very definite step takes place when we come to self-conscious humanity. The divine spirit has evolved a living soul, an emanation of itself, that this soul may become immortal but individualized. Why is it necessary that the soul shall undergo the experiences of evolution? Individuality means spontaneity, self-choice, volition, reality, creative ability. If we were to assume individuality and volition without law to bring its choice into fruition, we would have a dream, a hallucination, a fantasy. Individuality presupposes choice, which presupposes the possibility of bringing choice into actual experience. Only through experience can it come full-orbed into conscious unity with the divine mind. When the working idea emerges from an unconscious to a self-conscious state, it becomes individualized. When the working idea emerges from an unconscious to a self-conscious state, it becomes individualized. At the doorway of self-choice, arbitrary methods of evolution cease. As we come to the point where we know ourselves, we are individualized. The cosmic mind must now wait for us to recognize our relationship to it. When we reach self-consciousness, the spirit can do nothing more for us until we consciously cooperate with it. Since human beings first said, "I am," nothing has been forced upon us. We have lived, learned, experienced, and discovered. Nature has awaited our discovery of its laws. As we discover new ones, we use them. This is the meaning of an ancient saying, "Nature obeys us as we first obey it." We must come to understand her laws, then she will obey us. Moses knew nothing about electricity. Solomon, with all his wisdom, had no automobile to ride in, and yet all those possibilities existed, waiting. Behold, I stand at the door and knock. Just as soon as the divine mind has brought the evolution of personality to a point of self-recognition, it must wait on our conscious cooperation for further evolution. But from the beginning, the idea of humankind perfected must have been in the divine mind. Involved within the cause is always the effect. And in the mind of the eternal, humankind must be perfect. God is perfect mind and cannot conceive imperfect ideas. Hence, the idea of humankind as held in the mind of God must be a perfect idea. The perfect human is the only human God knows. Humankind may do as it wills with itself, but it will always have itself left. We may desecrate, but we can never lose our lives. The Spirit ever has a witness within us, and the God-intended person already knows that he or she is one with the whole. That nature is comprised of one ultimate power, using many instruments and having many avenues of expression. The time has come in our evolution when we should awaken to a recognition that behind each one stands the eternal mind, that each has a complete access to it, that each may come to it for inspiration and revelation, that surrounding all is a divine law obeying the dictates of this eternal mind. The unfoldment of consciousness has arrived at the place where individuality can realize its own divinity. We are waking to the recognition of this. The God-intended person is a divine center of God consciousness on the pathway of experience for the purpose of evolving a definite individuality. But it is only as we work in conscious cooperation with the universal that we awaken to reality. It is only as we understand nature and comply with her laws that we can ever hope to use them. The law is one of freedom and not of bondage. Behind all, there is a great urge trying to express through every medium. Why not allow it to express through you? Evolution is a principle which, though invisible, finds manifestation in every form of life. It is the logical and necessary outcome of universal intelligence or spirit. But evolution is an effect of intelligence and not its cause. It follows involution. Involution is the idea, while evolution is the unfoldment of the idea. Involution precedes evolution with mechanical precision propelled by an immutable law, the law of cause and effect. God is universal intelligence or spirit. The only way that universal intelligence can move is by an interior movement. God must move within God if God is all. He moves within and upon himself. The movement back of the objective world must be a subjective movement, a movement of consciousness. It is necessary then that whatever movement takes place must take place within and upon the One. And it follows that whatever is created out of this One. God moves upon God. This is the starting point of creation. Every time one conceives an idea, that is God expressing itself. It is eternally knowing and eternally known through everyone. It is eternally knowing and eternally known through everyone. God's nature is to know. There is an emotional craving or desire for expression inherent in the universe. This is a universal law obeying the will of spirit. This is the law through which that which is involved evolves. We, as conscious spirit, set a universal law in motion, which makes things from ideas. The spirit involves, the law evolves. The law does not know that it is evolving. It is its nature to evolve. Evolution, then, is not a thing of itself. It is an effect. Behind all objective form, there is a subjective likeness, which exactly balances and is the prototype of the form. The thing involved perfectly balances the thing evolving from it. Evolution is the time and the process through which the spirit unfolds. Insofar as any individual understands this mental law, he or she is able to use it. We must learn how it works and comply with the way it works. Always it is an obedient servant. As we sow, so shall we reap. Involution and evolution, the thought and the thing, the word and the law, the purpose and the execution. This is the sequence of the way the law works. While there is liberty in the evolving principle, it is always in accord with certain fundamental laws of necessity. It seems as though behind evolution there is an irresistible pressure compelling more, better, higher, and greater things. If we study the evolution of locomotion from the rising of humankind from the clod, we see people riding upon a horse, in a cart, then in a wagon, and so on to the automobile and the airplane. What is this but the evolution of locomotion, the unfolding through the human mind of the possibility of travel? If we watch the evolution of travel by water, we find the same thing from the raft to the ship. What is the inevitable end of locomotion? We shall ultimately do away with every visible means of transportation. That which is the principal back of evolution will not be satisfied with the process through which we now go. When we shall have unified with omnipresence, we shall be omnipresent. When you and I know enough and are in Los Angeles and wish to be in San Francisco, we shall be there. When we know enough to want to pass on to another plane of existence and come back again, we shall be able to do so. When we know enough to multiply the loaves and fishes, we shall do so. When we know enough to walk on the water, we shall be able to do that, and it will be in accord with natural law in a spiritual world. So I'd also like to read chapter 7 to you as well, and it is called The Secret of Spiritual Power. By spiritual power, I mean a dynamic something which is intelligent, conscious of what it is doing and able to do without any external aid. We think of physical energy in terms of horsepower or the ability to lift a weight of certain number of feet from the earth. Let us think of spiritual power not as contradicting physical power, but as being more subtle. There must be spiritual power which does not contradict the physical, but is the parent of it. Being the greater, it must include the lesser. Through the ages, there are authentic records of persons who have exercised spiritual power. No matter what their religion or theology may have been, no one can be a student of history or a keen observer of life without coming to realize that there is such a thing as spiritual power. Therefore, without argument, we may accept its reality. All the world is in search of reality. Intuitively, we feel the necessity of something greater than we are, something upon which we may rely with certainty. We need spiritual power even more than we need physical power. We need both, and we have both. But having great physical energy at our command has not satisfied us. Consequently, we see an interesting thing going on in the world today. Many of our scientists are becoming philosophers, endeavoring to determine the relationship of their own science to the larger meaning of life. One of the world's greatest psychologists says that after 30 years spent in analyzing the subjective thought of educated people from every part of the world, he has found, in the case of people over 35 years of age, that almost without exception the neurosis is caused by the lack of a true religious perception. He is not speaking as the theologian, but as a scientist and a physician, when he states that in no case has there been a permanent healing without the restoration of some type of religious faith. Wow, that's interesting. His conclusions have nothing to do with any particular creed, doctrine, or dogma. He is speaking of the essence of a true religious conviction, which relates neither to Catholic nor Protestant, Jew or Gentile. It means an inner conviction which is truly spiritual. No matter what outward form of worship it takes, religion is a reaction to humanity's spiritual inquiry, the outward form of an inner conviction. But all through the ages, those who have been truly spiritual, no matter what outward form their conviction took, have had this in common. They have believed in something greater than they were, and a something which responded to them. This belief is the very basis of spiritual power. It is the fundamental principle of every religion. We do not need to discuss the merits or demerits of other people's religion. Every person's religion is good and necessary to him or her, and he or she would not have it. We like ours, that is why we espouse its cause. The power of all religions is in the spiritual principles involved and in our conscious unity with these principles. There is such a thing as spiritual power. But what shall we do with the people who are so full of common sense that it fairly oozes out of them? They are perhaps in many ways very scientific people, probably marvelous mathematicians who may know all about the physiological structure of the anatomy, but with it all, they are so full of common sense that it has become a disease with them. They are so sane that they are almost insane. "Show me the soul," they exclaim. Yet they have not the slightest idea what the energy is that enables them to ask this question. All the physicists on earth do not know what the power is that enables us to wiggle our finger. If we should wait for that which is objectively tangible before we deduce a principle, we would never get anywhere. There is no law in the universe which has this kind of tangibility. There is some intangible reality which constitutes the dynamics of spiritual power. It is always the invisible that gives rise to the visible. Let us never fall into the grave error of thinking it is a mark of intelligence to say, "I am so sensible that I must have everything made tangible." There is nothing more tangible in the universe than thought. And who has ever seen thought? Love cannot be seen. We see what people do who are in love. We see that it changes their whole psychology and generally for the better, but it is an intangible thing. We do not see life, we experience it. Therefore, we need not be confused if someone asks, "What does spiritual power look like? Have you weighed and measured it?" Of course not. We have heard a great deal about the psyche and the repressions, complexes, and inhibitions and the libido. Yet there is nothing about them that we can get a picture of. They are invisible and intangible. Who has ever seen the power or the intelligence that converts bread, potatoes, and meat into fingernails? And yet, here they are. So let us feel that when we are discussing spiritual power, we are talking about something that is real. We have more evidence of the soul than we have of the atom. Much was known about the soul before we ever heard of the atom. Actually, matter disappears into an entirely theoretical and hypothetical field, and no one knows what it is. Through the ages, there have been people like Jesus, Buddha, Emerson, like many saints of the Catholic and Protestant churches, and many saints who had no church, who have had and used a subtle spiritual power. So far, psychology has not accounted for this power. The pursuit of philosophy is a search for it. Most scientific research has overlooked it. But it is the very essence of religion and its highest goal, a unison with some invisible but intelligent reality to which we have given the name of God or Spirit. The approach of innumerable people to reality has produced a corresponding response and reaction from whatever it is they have contacted, which is just as tangible as a cornfield at harvest time or as a sunset. We are just emerging from an age of such extreme scientificism that has almost produced a spiritual stagnation of the soul. People thought that because everything could be resolved into law, nothing spiritual was left. That age is passing. It was perhaps necessary in order to usher in the remarkable things science has done for us. But we need scientists who are able to ponder deeply on the meaning of their own discoveries. Why is it that all scientific research leads back into that invisible source of nature from which all things spring? It seems as though the end of all the sciences converge in the beginning of an infinite unity from which each one must emerge. This is a belief of many scientific people of our day. Should it seem strange, then, that we who are engaged in the search of self-discovery should say that the spirit of humanity is rooted in a common unity, one universal presence? Surely we have an adequate foundation upon which to build not the hope, but the assurance that each one of us is a God thought in the germ. The secret of spiritual power is a consciousness of one's union with the whole and the availability of good. We are one with the universal creativeness, which is the God of theology, the spirit of mysticism, the reality of philosophy, and the principle of science. God is accessible to all people. Let us approach this reality in a childlike manner. We shall then wave aside all differences and realize that Jew or Gentile, Protestant or Catholic, Buddhist or Confucianist, idealist or agnostic, all have a spiritual power in such degree as they are unified with reality. The history of spiritual endeavor has proved that when one believes in spiritual reality, it descends into his or her thought and flows out into expression. This is why people like Jesus have said, believe. I have often felt that the spirit must be pure belief, pure imagination, pure feeling, pure volition, and complete knowingness fused into unity. An infinite personalness, as personal to you and to me as we are to each other. God must be more than a mathematical principle. Spirit is the cause, the essence of that being from which we are personified. In that place where the Spirit personifies, it must be personal to us, not separate from us, but personal and present in us. Perhaps this is the meaning of these sayings. It is not I, but the Father who dwelleth within me. Or, the Father is greater than I. Spiritual power arises from a consciousness of our unity with the whole and an awareness of the direct responsiveness of the Spirit to us. Its creativeness being with and in us, it is ever available, not as some far-off divine event toward which the whole creation moves, but as that thing Whitman meant when he said that within each of us nestles the seed of perfection. And what Emerson meant when he said that Jove nods to Jove behind each one of us. It is the thing all spiritual enlightenment has recognized, God incarnated in the individual. As Emerson said, let us not say God was, but is. God, not God spake, but speaks. The immediate availability of the presence of Spirit The immediate availability of the presence of Spirit is neither in the mountain nor at the temple, neither lo here nor lo there, for behold, the kingdom of God is within you. This is a perception of spiritual power. Therefore, when we speak the truth, it is no longer I, but the Father who dwelleth in me. Could we thus conceive of the divine Spirit as being incarnate in us, while at the same time ever being more than that which is incarnated? Would we not expand spiritually and intellectually? Life is creative. It is intelligent. It responds to us intelligently. To know this is one of the secrets of spiritual power. It is direct. We should believe in eternal goodness, eternal love, and eternal responsiveness. Since our ability to know is God in us, it must follow that thought is creative. The words I speak unto you, they are spirit, and they are life. The teacher did not say these words as going to stir up the pity of God. The teacher did not say these words are going to stir up the pity of God. He said these words, and then he sent out his word which healed. When thought knows, understands, and embodies reality, it becomes and is reality, and reality is power. This is the secret of spiritual treatment. Spiritual healing is not willing, wishing, beseeching, nor repeating a lot of formulas. It is the result of a dawning perception of spirit, incarnated in the one needing help. When the illusion of opposites disappears from our mental perception and we come to realize that we are whole, we shall be made whole. I was reading an article a few days ago written by one of the foremost psychologists of our day, in which he said that analytical psychology is effective in such degree as physicians analyze out of themselves the complexes which are in their patients. For about 20 years, I've been teaching that in spiritual practice, the practitioners must heal themselves of their patients' troubles. Jesus said that we must first cast the beam out of our own eyes. It is necessary for those practicing spiritual healing to heal themselves of the beliefs, the inhibitions, or the psychic knots that are conscious and subjective in the thoughts of their patients. Spiritual practitioners heal themselves of the beliefs which are affecting their patients. And if they are successful, and if the patients accept such healing, the patients will be healed. Let's say that one more time. Spiritual practitioners heal themselves of the beliefs which are affecting their patients. And if they are successful, and if the patients accept such healing, the patients will be healed. I have known analytical psychologists who work for their patients when the patient is absent. This is what we mean by absent treatment. There is no absence in the one present, and the psychoanalysts analyzing their patients and treating at a distance will get results. In the spiritual world, there is no here or there. There is just everywhere. It is at the point of immediacy. Ooh, that's good. Okay? So distance can be between the healer and the patient. The spiritual world is not here or there. There is just everywhere. It is a point of immediacy. Spiritual power is an interior awareness. Practitioners think or feel their way to a place in their own minds where they perceive that good is immediately available. There is such a thing as spiritual power. It is a happy, wholesome, healthful-minded thing. A person without religious conviction is not normal. The world needs a spiritual revival more than anything else. It does not need that we should all become Methodists or Catholics or religious scientists. It needs spiritual conviction. We should spontaneously look to that which is greater than we are, and yet of which we are a part. That which is greater than the personal I, but which is forever flowing through the personal I. The personal word has power because spirit is power. How simple, how direct. Should we not consciously practice this, the greatest of all sciences, the purest of all religions, the most intelligent of all philosophies? So there you go tonight. Book shorts. I was reading out of Can We Talk to God by Ernest Holmes, one of his many books. His most famous book, of course, is the Science of Mind textbook. So thank you for joining me tonight. I hope you have a great evening. Mwah. Join me next time.